Welcome to the Writing Gym Podcast. We're here to pump up your writing. And now your host, Andy Brixey, personal trainer at the Writing Gym.
Hi, I'm Andy, personal trainer at the Writing Gym. Welcome to Bench Pressing with Bob Burg. I'm excited to introduce you to this week's guest, but first, a word from our sponsor, the Writing Gym, where you can pump up your writing. This month, the Writing Gym is offering its limited VIP membership. The benefits include a weekly group mastermind with the resident writing coach, a monthly personal coaching session with Annalisa Parent, unlimited access to all of the Writing Gym modules, and the VIP Expert Roundtable. Go to www.writing-gym.com to sign up. Enrollment for this offer closes on March 12th. So we only offer this for a short time and only twice a year. So don't miss the opportunity to sign up. And now, I'd like to introduce our resident writing coach, the gal who helps you pump your writing into shape in the Writing Gym. Welcome back to the Writing Gym Podcast, Annalisa Parent.
It's so great to be here with you again, Andy. It's a great day.
So everyone loves to eat, but not everyone loves to cook. Well, let me tell you all something. Annalisa loves to cook, and her two favorite things to make are crepes and lasagna. This makes perfect sense because Annalisa is both French and Italian. And as someone who has eaten both of these foods before, I can promise you that she's just as good of a cook as she is a writing coach. And that's huge praise. Seriously, check out her crepe and lasagna recipes. We will put them directly in the show notes. And now, to introduce you to our fantastic guest today, Bob Burg is a sought-after speaker at company leadership and sales conferences, sharing the platform with everyone, from today's business leaders and broadcast personalities to even a former U.S. president. Bob is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence, with total book sales of well over 1 million copies. His book, The Go-Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, has sold over 500,000 copies, and it has been translated into 21 languages. It has been released in a new expanded edition with a foreword by Huffington Post founder and publisher Arianna Huffington. Bob is an advocate, supporter, and defender of the free enterprise system, believing that the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people they serve. He is also an unapologetic animal fanatic and serves on the board of trustees of Furry Friends Adoption and Clinic in his town of Jupiter, Florida. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bob.
It's my pleasure to be here, Andy. Thank you for having me.
Bob, thanks so much for being here from me as well. And I wanted to jump right in. We talked with John David Mann, your co-author, a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't tell us too many secrets, so don't worry. And he talked a little bit about what your co-authorship process was like, what that partnership was, and how the two of you worked together to create these successful books. We'd love to hear about that co-authorship process from your point of view. What's it like to co-author a book?
Well, Annalisa, I think there are different types of collaborations. The first time I ever co-authored was a book written about 20 years ago. It was a very specific topic I was writing on, and I needed someone who had more knowledge in a certain aspect. And so I did what's called, as you know, a work for hire, where I asked this person to come in, and she did a lot of the editing, and it was a great process because she was very good at what she did, and it added a lot to the book, and it was fine. I think there are some co-authorships where it's very the two people are very equal in terms of abilities, let's say, and there's probably a lot of back and forth and give and take and negotiation and this and that may or may not be fun for either one of them. The work for hire that I did was great because she was very talented in the area she needed to be, and she was a better writer, and she was very helpful in the editing. And then there was with John, where it wasn't a work for hire, it was a co-authorship. But the two co-authors were not equal in writing ability. He's a great writer. He's just fantastic. He's a genius. And so really, it was a pleasure for me on a couple of levels. One is that he was the storyteller, and with The Go-Giver, we've done a couple different books. We've done a couple parables and also a more of an application base, which was not a parable, but he's still the lead writer. This guy's just so good at what he does. But what makes him a joy to work with is not only is that he's a nice person, he's very humble, and he's very, very collaborative, and never makes you feel like you're not as good a writer, but you just know. I mean, he's John David Mann, so it's very easy. In other words, I can't talk about the challenges so much because there really aren't. And there's certain points that we don't agree with in certain areas, and we typically, I think, unofficially, if a certain point or something bothers a person to have in the story, we just won't include it. But very rarely did that even happen. We're so in sync, I think, in terms of the way we look at life and business, plus just the fact that he's so good at what he does, it made it very easy. At least for me. I don't know if it was easy for him, but it's easy for me.
So it sounds like, if I'm understanding you correctly, Bob, for the writers who are listening and thinking about co-authorship, that maybe what's most important is to find the partner who kind of fits what they're looking for, that there's not a one-size-fits-all for the way that co-authorship needs to work.
Oh, I agree with you. Absolutely. So,
Great.
I mean, I think it's always important when you co-author that it's someone with the same basic core values. I think if you don't have that, you're probably going to have issues that come up. But if you trust that person in terms of their values, in terms of their integrity, and in terms of their work ethic, and anything else is going to be able to be worked out. But I think having it complementary, either in terms of skill level or different areas of expertise. And again, it depends what the book is about and what's needed in that regard. I think that's what you want to do. You don't just want to go into it half-cocked and just, hey, yeah, okay, let's do a book together.
Now, I'm sure when you met John David Mann, and I think this is actually the way that he described it, was that the two of you clicked really quickly. But what might a process look like for vetting a co-author? If our listeners are looking to start a co-author relationship, what kinds of questions might they ask to make sure that their values are on the same page?
It's a good question. With John, he was the editor-in-chief of a magazine, a very niche-specific magazine that I used to write for. And so every month when I'd submit the articles, John would, an editor does, would take it and edit it and send it back, and he would, let me know what he did. Now, in a lot of cases, an editor is going to make the changes, and it's tough luck if you like them or not. But with in this case, he would always tell me exactly what he edited. He'd say, "Is this okay? Is this our?" And it was kind of a running joke because my response to him was always, not only is it okay, you write my stuff better than I write my stuff. And so I also knew about his reputation from a couple of other niche-specific books, and so I asked him to co-author this with me and be the lead writer. So it wasn't even a matter of us checking each other out to see if it was something. I knew he was the person who I wanted to, and I'd never met him in person at that time. I met him the first time we met, and I had asked him to co-author this. He was very busy at the time and wasn't sure. So when he and his, at the time, fiance, now wife, Anna, came down to visit her mom in Tampa, which is across the state from me, they actually drove across state. We had a 4-hour dinner where we just discussed the book and our ideas for it and our thoughts and where it would go and what we would do. And, and I knew even more so that this guy was the right guy. And I assume, and I think we had enough of a know you, like you, trust you relationship that we both felt comfortable going in. Though, you never know. Again, you never do know before. But so I think, I don't know if there's questions or different points I would suggest asking each other. I don't think I've thought that deeply about it, which probably isn't right. I probably got more lucky in just finding John and not having to go through, But I think what you're saying, though, is very, very smart. Don't jump into something like this. Make sure there's that. And again, I like to call it the know, like, and trust aspect.
Great. Now, I know Andy has a question, but I want to jump in with a style question. So I met you earlier last year. You gave me a copy of this amazing book, The Go-Giver. And this is the honest to God truth. I could not put this book down. I post-it noted the whole thing. This is a great book. Please do pick up a copy of Bob and John's book. It's amazing. And we'll have a link to it in the show notes. Now, the two of you chose to tell this business story as a parable, which can be a risky move, right? There's a lot that can, I don't know, maybe sometimes seem cheesy or not quite be played off the way that you want it to in a parable. It's a hard thing to do. So talk to me about how that process came together and how you decided to get your message across through a parable.
Sure. Years ago, my first big selling book was called Endless Referrals. It was a how-to book basically on business networking. And it was how people who maybe weren't comfortable with the networking process or going out and meeting new people and finding A-list high-quality prospects and referrals, how they could do it step by step in a system. I personally define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles, the key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then all you need to do is A and do A consistently, and you'll eventually get the desired results of B. That's following a system, and that's how I wrote Endless Referrals, and it's a networking system. Networking being not just, when people think of networking, they think of that stereotypical fast-walking, slick-talking sales guy who hands out business cards, right? No, I define networking as the cultivating of mutually beneficial give and take, or give and receive win-win relationships when done correctly, when done with a genuine caring about the other person, their wants, their needs, their desires, following a system. In doing so, now you've created the context for a good, healthy relationship like that. So that was that book, but it was very, as you can tell, it was how-to. It was step by step by step. But throughout the years, I had read many, many parables and always loved them. And whether it was a longer form one such as James Classen's Richest Man in Babylon, or Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, or toward then you got in the late 70s, early 80s, I think it was Doctors Blanchard and Johnson, the 1 Minute series, 1 Minute Manager, 1 Minute Salesperson, 1 Minute Apology, 1 Minute this. And I read a lot of them. They're well done. And then there were lots of them. And I always loved them because they were quick, they were short, they were exciting. You got to learn some great information, and it was relatable. And, there's an old saying that facts tell, but stories sell. Now, I think that's a good saying, but something John said brought it in clear a little bit more. He said, I'm not sure that stories sell, but stories connect. And once the connection's there, now you can get that point across. You can communicate that point. You can sell the idea. And that, I think, is what a parable really does when done correctly. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to take the basic idea or premise of Endless Referrals, which again was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, and and put that into a parable. And then, so my question was, okay, well, so how do you build? What's the essence of building that kind of relationship? Well, you're always giving. You're giving value. You're focused on creating or giving value to the marketplace, to individuals, to other, and so forth. And so, we came up with the name, The Go-Giver, but then it wasn't until, John and I really discussed and got into it that we really had the idea of what the story would be. So that was really how it came about. I never felt there was a risk doing it because of my confidence in John. I just knew this guy, he's such a great writer. And not everyone knew him at the time. Now you walk into a bookstore, for those that where there are still actually bookstores, or in an airport bookstore, and there's going to be 3 or 4 or 5 books that have been co-authored by John that have made the New York Times bestseller. But back then, he was sort of the guy behind the scenes. So only certain people knew who he was. And fortunately, I happened to be one of them.
Yeah.
And so, so I didn't for a minute think it was a risky kind of venture at all.
Great.
So John, I'm so sorry. We were talking about John and I got so involved. I was like, no, I remember that interview with him. That was fantastic. But Bob, I want to talk to you about mentorship. I think that a lot of aspiring authors, look for a mentor and they're not really sure, first, what's the best way to find a mentor? And most importantly, what should someone who's an up-and-comer not do when they're trying to find one?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I agree with you. I think mentorship is very, very important. We know that mentorship can cut our learning curve by years, right? Because there's somebody else's experience, someone who's been there and done that, and can. I think one thing though that people do when they're seeking out a mentor, one mistake some people make, is they kind of ask for the marriage before asking for the date. They'll approach someone whose work they admire and they'll just say, hey, would you be my mentor? Or would you mentor me? And, I think a mentor-protege relationship is just that. It's a relationship. And it's something that develops over time. Now, there's nothing wrong with approaching someone you don't know, but who would like to, and asking a question, asking for some advice. And I think that's how you build up to that mentor-protege relationship. So in other words, to let someone know that you admire their work and so forth, and I'm, about to write a book or about to do this and so forth. I know you're very, very busy. If it's not too presumptuous of me, may I ask you 1 or 2 very specific questions? And what you're communicating to them is you're placing value on the process. And you're letting them know you're not going to waste their time. You're not someone who's asking just, to feeling entitled that they, but that you would like their advice and that you respect and that you, and so I think when you do that, and then it's important to make sure to look up information, do as much research on that person as you can, which of course on the internet now is pretty easy, so that you don't ask anything that you already could know the answer to, just by doing your research. And when they and most people will say yes, and then the ones who don't, that for whatever reason they don't, and that's okay. But I think most people like to help other people. Generally speaking, most people do, and if they have the time to do it and they're able to, they're happy to. But then, and then when you speak with them and you and they've given you some good advice and you've made sure not to keep them too long, and make sure you thank them for it, let them know you look forward to applying what they've said, and you'll keep in touch and let them know what happens. Then that very day, I would write a handwritten, personalized thank you note. I'd put it in a number 10 envelope and hand stamp it. Okay, so no, not a text or an email or whatever, but to thank them. And, such a pleasure speaking with you. I know you're very busy, and I'm so grateful for your taking the time to do so. I look forward to applying the information, and I will let you know what. And then I would even, just as a thought, if you've looked them up and you see they have a favorite charity or something, make a small, doesn't need to be big, but a small donation to that charity in their name. They'll be notified of it, and you're not doing it to kiss up to the person, but again, just to communicate that you took the time to discover what they find to be of value, and that you want to honor and acknowledge that. Also, if you know that they collect certain things, old books of Greek mythology by so and so, and you find something like that, send it to them. Anything you can do with it. But here's the thing. Then when you eventually contact them again, maybe you have another question or so forth, again, kind of do that same thing where you show respect to the process and so forth. And then over time, a relationship, an ongoing mentor-protege relationship, may or may not develop. Sometimes that mentor is there for one or two questions, and that's fine, and there's somebody else. Other times something really grows, and it turns into a relationship. You just don't know. But I would go that route as opposed to trying to jump right away to saying to someone, will you mentor me?
That is such a good point. And I love the analogy that you make of people trying to jump in to the marriage before they start dating. And there is value to starting that mentor relationship very slowly. You may look at someone as kind of the pinnacle of success, and maybe their methodology or their philosophy just isn't the way that you want to go. And so on both ends, in both being respectful for the person who's very busy and of their time and expertise, but also for yourself as the learner, you want to make sure that this person's expertise matches sort of what you're looking for and where you're going, whether it's in authoring a book or becoming an entrepreneur or whatever it is that you're looking for mentorship in.
Great point. Yeah.
Great points about mentorship. That's really helpful. Bob, I want to jump into talking about your actual book. So you called it The Go-Giver, and obviously that's a play on the go-getter. Tell us what a go-giver is. What does that mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting because let me answer that question first, and then I want to talk about the playing off on the term, because that's a great point. A go-giver is simply someone who has learned, or maybe always intuitively known, that shifting their focus, and this is the key, shifting their focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing value to others, and understanding that doing so is not only a nice way, a pleasant way of doing business, it happens to be a very financially profitable way as well. In their focus through the 5 laws that John and I talk about in the book, the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity, when used together holistically, it really is it's a proven methodology for someone to be successful at whatever they would like to be able to do. That's what a go-giver is. It's that focus. Or as we say, it's moving from an I focus or a me focus to an other focus, always looking to provide value for others. Now, we did play it off the term go-getter, but a go-giver and a go-getter are actually not opposite concepts. We also love go-getters because a go-getter is someone who takes action, right? Someone who understands that you can have the greatest thoughts or ideas and the best intent in the world, but unless action's put into the mix, nothing is going to happen. So the neat thing, though, is many go-getters are also go-givers. And we would say that every go-giver is also a go-getter. So the opposite of a go-giver is not a go-getter. The opposite of a go-giver is a go-taker. And that's that person who does feel entitled to take without having given value to the other person, to the process, to the situation. So we say, be a go-getter and a go-giver, just don't be a go-taker. But as you said, we sort of positioned go-giver opposite of the more well-known term go-getter.
I love that. And, I love how you kind of came to your title. It's very clever. It's catchy. People see it right away and they understand that connection to the phrase go-getter, but now we're turning that phrase on its side. So it's a very clever title. And certainly we can learn something from what you and John did to come up with a title, because sometimes titles are really hard.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, and John and I have, we wrote a book, and I don't know if you discussed this with John on the call, about the title of one of our books that did not sell, and then we retitled it, and now it's selling really well. Did you discuss that?
No, tell us.
Well, after the Go-Giver, okay, so we wrote a follow-up that was more application-based called Go-Givers Sell More. That one sold very well. So not an issue there. But then the publisher asked us to do another parable, a follow-up to the Go-Giver. So we did one called It's Not About You, which to us anyone who had read The Go-Giver, or even if someone who didn't, they'd kind of know, well, anyone who'd read The Go-Giver should know that it came from law number 3, the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests, so forth and so on. We thought that would be a natural follow-up, and that it would even be an appealing title to those who hadn't read the first book. We were wrong. People didn't buy the book, and they didn't buy it in droves. It was amazing to us. And we couldn't understand why, because the people who bought it said, this is as good as The Go-Giver and so forth and so on. But I was speaking with one person, and we were just talking about how, some books sell, some don't, some titles, some this. And I told him about that. He said, Bob, it's interesting, though. He said, a book called It's Not About You. He said, if I was looking at it and I didn't know you, I'd look at the title, I'd say, well, if it's not about me, why would I want it? And that made pretty good sense. There was also something else. One reason for the sales of The Go-Giver, is that it's a gift book. People feel very comfortable giving a book to someone with the title The Go-Giver, because what are you saying? It's like you're saying to this person, hey, this is you. You're a go-giver. It's a compliment. But think about it. Giving a book as a gift called It's Not About You. What's this person trying to tell me? It's like giving somebody a bottle of Scope mouthwash, right? What's this person trying to tell me? We did not have a good title. And, we're pretty cognizant, we like to think we are, of how now, but we weren't. Now, here's the ironic thing, right? We're saying it's not about you, but it is about that person reading it. And so we did the exact opposite thing of what we were preaching. We came up with a title we liked, and we didn't think about it from how the other person might see it. So we asked the publisher, and we saw a couple parts that we could rewrite, but not because it really needed it to be, other than it was just kind of a couple ideas, thoughts that were there. But we said, could we re-release it with a new title, make it so it's obviously a Go-Giver book in the Go-Giver, because it was set in the same fictional town. There were a couple of the same characters, but mostly they were referred to, and a couple of the scenes were. But we were surprised. The publisher said yes. We have a great publisher, Portfolio, Penguin Random House, and they're such great people. I mean, I've worked with several publishers, and they've all been good. They've all been very nice, good people. But these people are the perfect publishing partners. I mean, they are just so supportive and fantastic. But so they let us do that, and immediately the sales. It doesn't sell like the Go-Giver did, but the original, but the sales have been very good. And it was just a title change. And once people knew it was a Go-Giver branded book, or part of the Go-Giver family, the Go-Giver Leader, that's a book you can give to someone. Yeah. That's a book you can give to a leader, an upcoming leader. You can give that to, you know what I'm saying? It's edifying. It makes a person feel good to receive something like that. So what a difference. And, hey, right, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover or by its title, but we do.
Yeah, and I mean, not that this is what you said directly, but I love the implication here that even people who have been at this for a while, even people who have published best-selling books, there are mistakes to be made and to be learned from. And that we're all a work in progress. And I think that when we're starting out as a writer and we're looking at that big daunting hill of publishing, we think that all of these mistakes are sort of setbacks, or maybe we're not cut out for that. And that's not necessarily the case. We all, no matter what point in the process we are in, we all make mistakes. We all choose the wrong title and have to make another plan. So, that happens. And I love that lesson of your story with your second book in the series. And then you turned it into a success. You learned from the mistake and turned it around. And I think that's all we can ever do, no matter where we are.
Exactly.
Great. So, I think that the Go-Giver and the Go-Giver Leader were specifically targeted to people maybe who were thinking about being in business or being entrepreneurs. But it's not just for those people. It's for anyone who's looking to establish themselves. So how can authors specifically, who kind of have to wear a business hat, how can they take this information that you're presenting in the Go-Giver and the Go-Giver Leader and help themselves to become more successful marketers and more successful authors?
Well, I think the principles in the book itself basically make the point that if you want to have a successful book, like any business, because really, as you know, the two of you know this and you teach this, a book is a business in and of itself. Because you can have the best written book in the world, and unless it's actively marketed, it's not going anywhere. Now, there's probably been a couple that, that were, there's a few I've heard about that were never really marketed actively by the author, and somehow some people got their hands on it and it just grew. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard The Power of No by, I'm trying to think of his name, the German-based author out of Canada. The Power of Now, not Power of No, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. I had heard that his first book, the Power of Now, that he didn't really promote that a lot. It just kind of grew and grew and grew. I also heard the same about Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I had heard about that was, I don't know if that's true, but that's what I'd heard. But most books, so you can't go with those one or two that happened. Practically every other single book that has sold well, when it was a first book, and there's some that, there's certain authors who can put something out. Obviously, you do the first book, all the work with Harry Potter, and after that, every Harry Potter book is going to sell. That's not what I'm talking about. But that first one, it's got to be worked as a business in and of itself. Mm-hmm. So for any business, you've got to be able to market it in a way that it's all about the customer, just like any business. You've got to have a customer focus. It's got to be what is in it for them. Okay, what are they going to get out of that book? So I think any author who, let's say, utilizes and applies the laws from the Go-Giver, the first thing they're going to see with the law of value is that reader has to, in order for that reader to buy the book, they've got to feel that they are going to receive more in value or use value from that book than the money they're paying for it. Okay, I mean, that's law of economics, right? People will exchange their money for that which they feel is of greater value than the money they're exchanging it for. Okay, the second law talks about that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So you've got to be able to sell a lot of books. Now, we know with most of us as authors, unless you are a celebrity author, the money you make from the book directly still isn't going to, make you wealthy, right? But you can still make some really good money, and that still should be a goal, right? That you want to make good money from your book, because what it means is you've served a lot of people, that a lot of people have bought the book. But the big law is law number 3, the law of influence, which says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. And that means that you're writing it for the reader. Now, there's people who will say, no, you write a book for yourself. And I get that. I understand that. And that's fine, because obviously you've got to love the topic, and you do write it really because you have something to say, because you want to say something. And it should be that if nobody bought it, you'd still feel good about writing it because you wanted to write it. But that's not a business. That's a hobby. Okay. It's got to be something that the public is going to want, right? Or else they're not going to buy it. And it doesn't matter whether it's a book or it's an iPad. If people don't want it, they're not going to buy it. So it's got to be, right? Law number 4, the law of authenticity. The most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. Hey, if you're a writer, if you're an author, don't try to be something you're not, right? It's got to be you. And it's got to speak to what you... and then the law, law number 5, the law of receptivity. The key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. I want an author who's writing a book to know that if it's a great book and they do the marketing and they do the work and they put everything into it, I want them to be able to accept the commission checks, the royalty check. I'm a salesperson, so I think in terms of commission, right? The royalty check, and I want them to feel good about it. And when people write to them and say that they were touched by their book, I want them to be able to say thank you and feel great about it. So all those things, I think, goes to, to any business and any person. But the key is to, you focus on the giving of value, right, to the marketplace. You focus on the giving, and then you allow the receiving.
Oh, I love that. And what you've also done here, Bob, is given us a great overview of your book, which again I cannot recommend enough. Listeners, I really, there are very few books, like maybe 5, that I picked up and I couldn't put down, and this was one of them. And
well, I loved your tweet when you took a selfie of yourself reading the book on the plane. That was great. I love that. I smile every time I see that.
Yeah, so I cannot recommend and endorse this book enough. Bob and John did a great job writing this book. So,
well, I know when I met you that weekend, all I heard was praise about you and your ability to teach and working with people and all the value people got out of your workshop. And so, I just hope people continue. I think the two of you are doing such great work, and like anything else, people need coaching and they need a system, that process of predictably achieving a goal. And the two of you have done this. You've been there, done that, and I, so I can't stress enough how much I hope people will, retain your services and let you help them to bring that value to their readers.
Oh, thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate that thought and endorsement. That's very kind.
Thank you so much. We have one final question for you. It's the big one that we ask every fantastic guest we have on the podcast, and that is, if you had one piece of advice to give to aspiring authors, what would that be?
I guess this would come from the sales and marketing person in me, because I would imagine John would probably say, learn how to write the best book, study Stephen King and study this and study and he'd probably take it from there. And I'm going to take it from the marketing side, because all that's important. Yes, you've got to be able to write that book, right? But I'd say learn how to sell and market your books, because if you don't, you're going to have the best book in the world and you're going to have a whole bunch of them sitting in your garage. And that doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do you any good, and it doesn't do the people whose lives can be touched by the magnificence of the value that you've shared in that book.
Wonderful.
That is fantastic advice. I think that's something that we talked about with several other guests on the show, and it's something that, I think a lot of authors are very nervous about, because by nature, most of us really don't like to be out in the world. We like to sit in the corner and we like to write, and then we just like to send it out and hope someone else reads it and not have to deal with it again, because we're done. We're done with it. Right. And I think that aspect of it, the selling and marketing your books, these are practically your children when you've worked so hard on them for so long. Mm-hmm. So it's like selling your baby, selling yourself, and that's a terrifying prospect. But it is so very important that no one ever, we're writers, so you write. No one ever talks to you about the part. Like, you have to. It has to happen. You have to market this. You have to sell it now, and that's so very important. Mm-hmm. I'm underlining all those notes. Thank you so much, Bob. That was fantastic. I loved all of your advice, and I really hope that everyone got such amazing notes as I did out of this fantastic podcast. For our listeners, you can find out everything about The Go-Giver on Bob's website, www.thegogiver.com. And you can even immediately download Chapter 1 from The Go-Giver and access lots of value-added resources, such as the special report, The Go-Giver Way, 5 Principles for Creating a Culture of Excellence. So everyone, make sure we're going to put that direct link into the show notes. And to check out Bob's genius in 140 characters or less, check him out on Twitter at Bob Burg. And as always, we will leave that link as well in the show notes. And thank you, Annalisa, so much for more of your fantastic writing advice. Annalisa is the resident writing coach in the Writing Gym. She helps writers start, finish, and bring to publication writing in all genres, and she's pretty much the best at what she does. Also, if you love our podcast, we'd love to have you join us in the Writing Gym. You're going to love all of the advice and amazing opportunities in the Writing Gym. Remember, limited VIP memberships are available as of today, so you don't want to miss this opportunity. You can get access to all the modules of the Writing Gym, plus a weekly group mastermind with the resident writing coach, a monthly personal coaching session with Annalisa herself, and access to the VIP Expert Roundtable. Go to www.writing-gym.com to sign up today. We even have a personal trainer, me, to help you keep accountable to your writing goals. I will not count your calories, but I will count your words. To see what we're up to this week, go to writing-gym.com. Don't forget the dash. Thank you so much for joining us to pump up your writing here on the Writing Gym podcast. And make sure and leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes if you enjoyed the podcast. And let us know how this fantastic interview with Bob really changed your writing in the show notes. Your 5-star rating will help other writers find this fastest growing podcast. And of course, please check out our show notes for direct links to where to buy Bob's book, as well as all of our takeaways and this week's fantastic freebie at www.writing-gym.com/weekly-writing-reps. Happy writing!
This has been the Writing Gym Podcast with Andy Brixey and Annalisa Parent. To join the Writing Gym, visit www.writing-gym.com.